Sweet. You guys ready?
Yeah, go ahead.
Observation 1 resolution now. Resolution 96 substantially increase regulations on the creation of the general artificial intelligence. Observation 2 is going to be here. Today A is going to be the machine learning or artificial intelligence increasing to recognize faces and also objects. The one of this is going to be the IBM computer Watson is able to respond to natural language. The 2 is also in October 2012. Carnegie Mellon in response to the U.S. Army is able to create a system that analyzes videos in order to predict what individuals would do. But the 3 is also going to be the 3rd of March for Elim County of Sheriff's County Department approach AGI about creating IBSI2 to basically use to predict what individuals do to increase surveillance. But the B is going to be the also the artificial intelligence is absolutely inevitable. It's only a question of how we do it. For instance, DARPA is developing a boatload of electronic neuromorphic nanotechnology cells, but also more laws that the computers inevitably are going to get faster. For instance, by 2020, that'll be literally a million times faster. So it is inevitable. It's only a question of what form it'll take. Therefore, the plain text. The United States federal government should prohibit the creation of facial identification software through the use of machine learning, or repeat that. The United States federal government should prohibit the creation of facial identification software through the use of machine learning. I'll clarify really quickly. Machine learning is simply non-biological systems of thinking. Synonym for AGI.
Yeah, is this strong or weak AI?
We'll say it's general, like you guys can
really? That's all you're going to say on that?
Yeah, if you guys want to make
okay, cool.
Yeah,
no, we will. That's fine, sure.
We'll defend it as AGI. Observation 3 is going to be sold. The 1 is going to be definitely the United States is the largest purchaser of this technology, which means that this would eliminate the market. For instance, not only through the TSA, but also their counterinsurgency strategy of increasing monitoring of green zones, but also the B on this is going to be the lab right now would never lose loss of their loans. For instance, CDC is ever provides 85% of all the research for this, $92.5 billion. But furthermore, we tell you the 3 of the biggest labs in the United States currently are on the break right now, post-sequester, which means they would never risk this. Advantage 1 is going to be racism. A, the uniqueness of 1 is going to be security storage, cash and racist priorities. For instance, TSA uses cash and spot order to profile people of color. In particular, we tell you that this is occurring when 88% of people who are soft are people of color. It even occurs in neighborhoods that are friends, not a majority of individuals who are people of color. For instance, 24% of one neighborhood in New York, 79% of the people who are soft were people of color. We tell you this would only increase the world of facial recognition and identification. But the 2 of this is also going to be therefore this increases the possibility of the increased facial identification, increases the myth of race and security. For instance, exactly what occurred in the post-9/11 Islamophobia, increases the status quo, the increase in the profile of people of color. B is solvency. 1 is going to be that therefore we make this profiling absolutely legal. So this it takes thousands of terabytes off the line that would be lawfully used. So this next is also going to be that therefore we reject the normative intersection between security and racism. For instance, one time you did a study on how Google basically profiled the quote-unquote minority names with AdSense being connecting the 2 crimes. Which means this would now post-plan would have to, technology developers would have to think about the societal consequences of what they do to see the internal links. The 1 is going to be that therefore that we failure to reject the identification dichotomy of identification results in the dichotomy of super and sub-races, splits the race of humanity into 2 races, that is sub-race and the super race, which means this makes racism not only more inevitable. 2, our results are going to be the increased identification results in the otherization of these people, making them less than ourselves. The C under the internal links is going to be the therefore the root cause of violence. We tell you that violence occurs before the existence of the geopolitical unit, which means racism. We tell you that state violence is actually really an issue of eugenic violence involving the race. Furthermore, this inevitably results in extermination and annihilation, known to be wide enough and perform weights enough well enough, which means this inevitably results in the logic of genocide and absolute annihilation. But the 4th is also going to be that we tell the loss of being these individuals being tracked every single day enough to just absolutely destroy their agency. We tell you this is destruction of agency destroys their absolutely active volition because it results in self-censoring and therefore an increase in coercion. The D is the framing. 1 is going to be the loss of this absolute loss of being as a result of collective suicide. These lives of people therefore are simply worse, are considered less worse than other people, which are less worse than other people. This inevitably means this is functionally an ongoing simple nuclear war, which means in a world where we value these lives of people right now being affected and somehow less of worth value. For instance, the lives of people potentially be affected with their disadvantage worse. We tell you this inevitably leads to nihilism, therefore the logic of nuclear war. But the second is going to be that therefore we need some kind of consequentials, but we need to have some side constraints. We tell you that we don't reject the complete, we simply say you prefer one of side constraints, because 1 is most educational because the world's 1% risk capital is being placed first, is inherently less educational because it's not most probable. But furthermore, we tell you that the most world inevitably would be in a world where we vote on probability. Advantage 2 is going to be hackers. The pushing using hackers absolutely decreasing our infrastructure and cybersecurity right now. First of all, this is exactly what we have both Google and also the federal government invading the Pentagon. Furthermore, everyone knows it's functionally known that the source is China. Over the United States federal government is currently refusing to say it explicitly right now. Over the Department of Homeland Security slowly coming out, which means the publication is that inevitable in the status quo. The 2 arguments is going to be the edge decreasing the status quo and issue specifically. We would tell you that not only does this absolutely make it look weak, but also the control board is inherently asymmetric, which means this is inevitably how it's going to be 1 loss of the speed is going to be the solved. The 1 is going to be that therefore we remove facial recognition, which is absolutely key to solving for foundation hackers and why they actually engage in this kind of hacking, because they're tired of the United States government following them and tracking them. The two is also going to be the perceptual shift from trying to find out where the threats come from to actually countermeasures, that is output versus input. The C is the internal link. One is going to be that therefore the foundational actors are absolutely key to what's going on right now. They are absolutely tired of being not only followed but also identified by the United States government. This is, for instance, anonymous. We tell these individuals don't have malicious intent, rather they hack when we prove their point of getting the United States government off their back. The problem occurs now in the world where they are the individuals copycat those functionally they have a manual how-to guide of how to do this, which means this is a world where we have post-planning means the systems always change, which means the actual internal link of what causes these individuals, like for instance other states actually hacking our system, has gone away because they can't actually adapt, because they don't have the foundational hackers to follow them. The next argument is going to be the removal of the intent is absolutely critical, because it limits the United States government, which means we do not no longer feel the need to publicize this in a world where we decrease cyber-terrorism. Propaganda means we don't have to publicize this, we don't have to decrease our relations between them. Before, it's going to be the U.S.-China relations are absolutely on the brink right now. Not only trying to decrease our interconnectedness by 59%, what was the number actually?
It's like 25%.
Yeah, we agree. They decrease our exports by 25%, which means to get rid of the economic matter argument that they would like to use. But next, our results are going to be trying to believe they can win a conventional war for the range 2009 75. They could win an air war, but furthermore, they increase the Buy American emphasis on Buy American United States only decreases the economic interconnectedness. Furthermore, national tensions between both of these countries means it's on the brink right now, which means we need to stop the ability not only of having attacks, which means it's also that, but also the possibility of having to publicize that information to the entirety. Fifth argument is going to be the publicity absolutely would not only increase the potential of conflict, but also would be seen in the context of other issues, which means the increased tensions over high cybersecurity would be that it would be seen in the context of other issues, which means it would inevitably the possibility of War 6 is going to be therefore that not only we solve this by solving for how the war would be fought, but also in particular why we remove the key element of how these individuals would how it actually occur. But the D is the impact. One, we say that a war between these two powers would absolutely be horrible for everyone. We tell them, for instance, they would absolutely devastate the economy. 57% of the world's oil travels to the Pacific, and also 40% of the world's oil. Furthermore, one half of the world's G8 economies are in the Pacific, which means it would absolutely devastate them. Furthermore, for every 24 people that go unemployed in the world, would decrease the economy. 9 people across the world die, which is the massive war systemic problems. Next service would be a massive war, would absolutely be horrible. That would end in a world of miscalculation and increase national, ethnic, and racist tensions. But furthermore, the PLA strategic nuclear doctrine is one of use of tactical nuclear weapons, which means man would demand actual retaliation, which means in a world of increased racism, it would make it absolutely inevitable. Furthermore, decreasing the economy would be absolutely awful, because the 2.1 million people that live on $1 a day would be the first to be annihilated in a world of systemic racism against these individuals, which means these are the impacts you should be evaluating. Okay.
It should be 4 off in the case. You should also put a separate sheet of paper on top of the case. It's going to be case arguments, but it's going to be a big block, so it's probably just better to stay organized.
Do you need like the background and solvency stuff?
You're going to need solvency, but we'll let you have the background. Is there any way that I can steal that podium?
Yeah.
Awesome.
You could not jimmy around with the legs. That's kind of a pain.
Yeah, I think we talked to Shane.
I did Chase.
It was a little jimmy. Okay, so let me repeat the order just to make sure we got that here. Okay, it is going to be 4 off, and then you're going to have a new sheet of paper, but it's going to be case arguments. It's just going to be a block. Then we are going advantage 2 first, then advantage 1. Is everybody ready? Okay.
First argument, topicality over general artificial intelligence. First argument is going to be you have to increase restrictions on strong artificial intelligence, which means that you have to decrease capabilities for specific artificial intelligence that has the capability of human thought. Our argument is going to be the one with our argument is that weak AI, which is essentially what they do is to say it's like the first Terminator versus the second Terminator, right? Our argument is that artificial intelligence is weak because it doesn't have the capability of human thought, which is what the vast majority of literature base supports. The standards for this is going to be one literature base. You can extend across the fact that the vast majority of artificial intelligence goes through strong AI. You can look towards China and Great Britain also holding the convention in 2013 proves that our argument is true. Our argument is that this is key to our ground because most of our disadvantages are predicated on the hegemonic impacts of strong AI, but also you can look to the fact that it takes away our playground because we don't have the ability to, pick out a certain industry's argument is that, literally the fact that they're after so small public as they are, we got jack us out around argument is going to be this one is devoted for a priori, meaning you evaluate procedures for anything else around, but also for fairness, education, and competing interpretations, meaning if we win our standards problem means we should win the debate. The next argument is going to be A, the interpretation. You have to use the United States federal government within your plain text. You have to use the United States federal government within your plain text. It's violation. They literally just write USFG on the plan. For the violation the standards of this is going to be predictability. The definition of a moving target plain text is literally the only binding advocacy that we have around the world, but they don't specify this is why it gives them the ability to shift out a certain political dissent. But argument is also going to be grounded key to our alternative factor dissent, as well as the fact that we have to have politics dissent based on the cross-party voters say priority for fairness, education, competing interpretations. You get one. You never know. Okay. Observation 1 is the framework. The 1 is that the PMC is epistemology. The 1 is the interpretation. The PMC should have to defend their epistemology. A is the interpretation. Our argument is that epistemology shapes policy. You can look to the fact that Rocky Coldmore proves this true. The next argument is that argument is that you have to analyze epistemology. Means that in a world where they don't justify their epistemology problem means you can vote neg on the future argument is that epistemology shapes future actions. Means that it's a prerequisite to policy. Round 2 is that the PMC does not defend their epistemology. Means that you can vote case on the negative world, but they don't have a justification for it. The 3 is that fiat is uniquely and problematic. 1 is anti-educational arguments that Congress never passed a simple sentence through bill to mockery of how the legal system works. B, Karl Rove also proves just because you're a policymaker doesn't necessarily mean, or just because you have debate experience doesn't necessarily mean you grow up to be a peacemaker. The last argument is going to be that voting affirmative doesn't necessarily mean the plan passes, means that there's lack of better on policy. Observation 2 is the opposite. The argument is going to be the affirmative reliance on technology as a panacea for solvency, so it leads to social construction of their harms. Argument is that epistemology basically means argument is that prevents solvency of any change for social issues because essentially we just view technology as the ultimate solvency for impact. You can look toward fluorescent light bulb salesperson's argument is that they go to your door and say that you can solve fix the environment by buying new environmentally friendly light bulbs, but this ignores the structural issues that humans are probably decimating the environment rather than using technology just to band-aid the issues. Next argument is going to be this treatment of technology. Argument is going to be essentially leads to the control of the panacea. Argument that this ultimately means it's the root cause of their crisis. Argument that they maintain the illusion that current level of consumption to the world is globally acceptable means that we continue to use technology as an ultimate solvency for all of our impact. Next argument is going to be this entrenched of materialist thinking. Argument is that this is the same mindset that's used to kill the planet and justify things like Amazon lobby as well as reusing oil until we hit our peak. Third argument is going to be this kills our ability to solve because it creates a dichotomization. Argument is that argument is going to be what's this?
Dichotomy of technological have and have-not.
Argument is that the dichotomization of technological have and have-nots, which means that there is literally no way that we'd be able to create a idea of how technology one can situate with our own selves, but two, we never avoid the structural issues because we never get to them faster. Fourth argument is going to be that technology is good. Our argument is going to be there. Technology good terms are nonsense. Our argument is that technology is not bad, just that the epistemological understanding of it is problematic. The last argument is going to be that federal action essentially our argument is going to be that federal action leads to a backlash. Our argument is that individual actions essentially I don't know what is it.
Federal action absolves individuals of their guilt, which...
Federal action absolves individuals of the guilt means that turns the entirety of their advantage. Well, structural issues continue. Alternative. The alternative is the vote negative to reject the PMC's epistemology of technology as a panacea for socially constructed harms. Vote negative to reject the PMC's epistemology of technology as a panacea for socially constructed harms. Question?
What is anti-technology epistemology living, or what is it productive?
No, it's one that doesn't view technologies as panacea for solving harm. Not that technology is good or bad.
So, our first argument is going to be the case that they never solve the root cause of their advantages. It's a quick fix of epistemology. We dispute technology as the idea that we can solve back for the entirety of our affirmative just by placing the band-aid on an issue, but this ignores structural issues means that you never solve back to the root cause of all your arguments. Still leads to environmental degradation as well as nobody's life. B argument is that the ballot is key to this. This also eliminates the ability for any current action there. PMC is already engaged in their epistemology. It's impossible to step her out of that argument. In a world that's true, any permutation would never allow the ballot to endorse its ethic. Argument is that the ballot votes for the affirmative team, but probably votes for a bad impact. The next argument is that you give one handwritten permutation that is not intrinsic or severance. Argument is that this is key to negative. Our argument is in a world where you sever out of this, it will lead to an immo strat. You probably shouldn't be able to sever out your reps. Okay. I'm actually just going to go straight to case.
Okay, that's fine.
All right. Here's that new block. Status quo solves your app for a bunch of different reasons. The first argument is going to be that the U.S. ban. Our argument is going to be U.S. ban on any AI technology is not strong enough to decrease development. You can look through a couple of different instances. One, large financial institutions will always be at the forefront of AI because of strategic action. Capabilities on computers means that they actually solve for the best economy in the world, and this is true. The argument is that China and England and also many other nations are doing a lot to basically lead to private advantages towards cybersecurity. They're relying on AI to be able to give that convention. Next argument is going to be that conventional weapons, like for AI, or better argument is that this one leads to a political decimation of the case because you never saw back to the weaponization. The next argument is turn argument is that you decrease conflict. Our argument is going to be that. Third argument is going to be that the argument is that they also lead to an organic emergence of AI. Argument is that AI is inevitable under this instance. Argument is that computation technology is inevitable at 2020. This is Ray Kurzweil. Once they stick enough computation hardware together, it ultimately means that AI is created. They cannot ban all hardware. Probably means that it is not. They never developed enough regulations to stop it. Means that all their terms are probably inevitable. Racism still exists. The next argument is going to be that China is holding a massive conference in 2013, inviting a lot of our researchers. Means that in a world where they're trying to make the top 500 list on the research, probably means that we lose our AI capabilities. Means that one structural issue they highlight in the case are ultimately turn back on you. And turn argument is going to be that China surpasses us militarily. Means that you enact the turn, so we'll get you on the case. First argument on page 2, turn R&D is split in focus right now. 75% of our R&D allocation funds go towards weapon development and medication. Argument is the one where only 5% go to actual scientific development. Means that any restriction destroys investor confidence, and as well as any idea that Congress could actually fund this. Means that cybersecurity ultimately fails as a result. Next argument is going to be no solve to you, no solve to the nano race that China is trying to implement, as well as the fact that their AI development problem means they solve back faster. Next argument is going to be the relations between China and the U.S. are inevitable. They're too economically interdependent, as well as Kerry's actually going to the conference 6 months. Means that no way the war happens. Next argument is racism inevitable. You don't solve the root cause. When you don't solve the root cause of racism, argument is that argument is it's an issue of race, not solve self-identification. Means that don't solve the root harm. Next argument is states are good for race, they're good for things like civil rights, as well as the fact that Okay.
Okay, so yours is going to be topicality in order, and then it'll be the solvency stuff. Let's sort of got that all in one spot. Racism is on the separate piece of paper though. So all the case stuff after topicality. And then the criticism. The order on the criticism will be so framework, offense, alt.
Can you say that one more time, man?
Okay. Okay. The order is THEI, USFG, or USFG has to be in the plain text. Then the case arguments. I have those all in one spot. I give you a good advantage too. So I do have you going to advantage one now. So I'll have the resolution stuff on the separate sheet. And then it is the criticism. Okay. Everybody good? Great.
First, we meet your topicality facial recognition is capable of human thought because it's able to recognize features of someone and identify their unique identity based on those features. Two is going to be the second is going to be the counter-interpretation artificial general intelligence, means a narrow or limited AI specifically for the ability for machines to act on their own. Several counter standards for this. Why you should prefer this. Eighth point is going to be literature. The AGI convention has 5-year history and it's the only one in existence. Everyone follows that, and it's absolutely the most predictable. It's between the words and literature base. We are also provide the most cost-effective education because it's where everybody looks at the general for what AGI actually is, but the these points can be common context. Wikipedia also uses the AGI conference's definition of AGI, which means it's absolutely the most accessible. Let's be honest, everybody knows that's for easy research anyway. These points can be reasonability. These points of reasonability, where as long as we provide ground for meaningful discussion of the topic, means you don't vote on this position, and also you get to read all of your offense in this debate, like the bad amount of case turns as well as the criticism as well. Don't vote on Topicality next. Topicality USFG. First of all, we say U.S. and federal government plan text is an acronym USFG, and next to be the counter-interpretation, we have to spend the second to be the implications, second to the counter-interpretation, we have to spend the implications of using the USFG, using the United States federal government plan text, and we need interpretation is what our advantages come from, I guess, visa, and next to be the counter-standard, the 8 points in the ground, it solves all your standards, makes us not a moving target. We're not going to say the USFG would be anything but the United States federal government. Also, we will probably spot you the links to using the USFG anyways, which means no risk of an impact on this piece of paper. Also, extend the reasonability argument previously are, solves all their outcomes. Cool. Case? Yes, you are correct. The development of artificial intelligence is inevitable. However, it is only a question of whether or not it gets applied to facial recognition technology specifically. Extend their arguments now that facial recognition, extend number one, and number two, that China and India are also massively increasing their investments into cybersecurity and intelligence and status quo. Also, the financial institutions are increasing their use of AGI, though none of these have any relevance in the debate whatsoever. However, they do certainly get us out of these, the advantage we're not going for. Next, they say the conventional weapons are better. All these arguments are irrelevant. When you can see our risk prioritization arguments at the bottom of command one. Next, go to the really that's all we need here. It doesn't matter if China gets to hold more conferences and research. All that shit's irrelevant. They're going to get it anyways, as per your arguments prior to that. Investor confidence, also irrelevant. Doesn't solve for nanораtes, also irrelevant. All those are not important in a world where we're solving for racism. We will justify our epistemology and win the debate on these questions.
I have a question.
What's up?
How do you stop China from developing facial recognition tech?
We'll slate modeling as well as other stuff. Actually, let's go back to that. Okay. Plans outside for being able to develop facial recognition technology because, first of all, it provides a model for what kinds of artificial intelligence are acceptable, but also China would always prefer weaponization of their artificial technology because they want to be able to check the United States. However, there's no impact to that because of the economic interconnectedness means absolutely zero risk for. Also, your investor confidence, go to investor confidence. Your investor confidence arguments are also bogus. The investor confidence is investor confidence is certainly high. Business confidence is recovering, and unemployment is down, which means that businesses are much more willing to invest in stuff and status quo. That's internal link to investor confidence. Doesn't matter, we're not going for it. There's not an impact in investor confidence thoughts anyways. Racism is the biggest internal link to everything. Not going for it.
Inevitable crap.
What's up?
You can go with this inevitable stuff.
What's
racism?
Yeah, that's on the racism.
Cool. They say racism is inevitable, and that we don't solve the root cause, which is self-identification or something. Arguing the first point of being able to make racist judgments is by being able to identify people based on the race. Well, arguments with artificial facial recognition technology would be absolutely utilized in this context. That's defeated arguments well extended. Defeated arguments through also you say that states are good for recognition. However, just probably first of all, it's treating entire states are founded upon racial division. South Africa comes to mind on this question. Also, there's only a chance the United States did the affirmative act in a epistemologically just way. Also extend the rest of the framing arguments as well. Prioritizing the needs of the entire state over the most marginalized populations is an act of collective suicide, which makes all their impacts inevitable. There's only a possibility of nuclear war when we say the populations are expendable, which is exactly what happens in a world where facial recognition technology is utilized for racist means. Additionally, with their speed and ethical side constraint, all these arguments go cold conceded. We flag these as the biggest impact in the debate, and the only one to evaluate as well. Out of the PMC, those arguments go conceded, which means that all the external offensive debate is irrelevant. Framework. Epistemology is about justifying why we come to know things and what about arguments we think are valuable. Our arguments you should evaluate intentions as a aspect of epistemology of the justification for our affirmatives. We break down the racialized norms and the status quo, which is why you should evaluate. The second is going to be our epistemology is justify the historicization against racism. Our argument is that being able to our affirmative is the justification of our epistemology. We read 3 or 4 minutes of offense about why we should be able to evaluate our justifications for why we should decrease the evaluation of racism. Also, you we should not be able to take your framework for several reasons. One, it massively sees the MGO that we always have to devote vast amounts of time for you to be able to extend a kill shot argument that takes that out. But also, you also read an advocacy that provides a defense of your framework as well. Arguments this would be ultimately bad as well. It would problem class education and stuff.
The reasons why fiat are bad are reasons why traditionally how fiat is being used is bad are impact.
All the reasons why fiat is bad and policy making bad can be extended. Yeah, can be extended through the also reasons why you don't evaluate the hegemony and stuff as well. These are reasons why you prefer the app. Okay, technology stuff off that. First of all, the development of technology is absolutely inevitable in our relationship, but the only thing, development of technology is inevitable. All these arguments are absolutely irrelevant. First of all, the people created, we have a biological struggle to survive. People are always going to generate technologies, a way to control their environment. For example, the first time we created tools was the time we separated ourselves from the state of nature. All of these are absolutely inevitable. There are only different degrees of technology, and there are only different degrees of technology. No chance that some sort of aspect of materialism would be able to resolve that. The tools and other stuff and technology that humans created was around significantly before any kind of globalized economy or anything like that. But next, the ontology is absolutely subjective, and the negative positive kind of static ontology that is intrinsically violent, where you say that you cannot have a specific relationship with the objects that surround you. Next is going to be next is going to be turned next is going to be a turn case solved. This argument wholesale. Our plan decreases the development of technology and decreases human reliance on technology. This is probably the coldest link term possible for these firms. We don't affirm the value of technology. In fact, we say technology bad because it's racist in the 1AC. So that's probably a reason as to why we affirm a productive epistemology when it comes to our relationship with technology, which is the reason why the affirmative solves your ass. Next, or okay, that's anyway. Solving that. Also, your arguments about federal action are absolutely irrelevant. Joe and I are individuals in this debate. We'll defend the rhetorical implication. Jesus Christ, wait. We will defend the epistemological justifications for our act. All that stuff is irrelevant. Alternative.
Wait, do you not defend the USFG anymore?
We do also defend rhetorical.
Oh, okay.
Question.
Okay. Permutation due to plan and permutation due to the app and reject area. And also, in order to reformulate your epistemology, this also we're not going to write it out. The MG has no prep time. We trade off with being able to answer your other arguments. It's unfair for the MG. Means you have to collapse any argument. Is also completely arbitrary. Reading it out should be good enough. Also, next going to be several net benefits of permutation. H point going to be that we have to be able to react on these things. Suffering is inevitable in a world where nobody acts. Also, they're not able to resolve this in a relationship with epistemology. With that technology does not resolve racism whatsoever. Means we have an extinction level did that again. The alternative, but next is going to be the permutations also. Given contradictions of permutations, the simulated depth to be affirmative because it allows new possibilities to be created.
All right. So it's going to be case. Like the solvency sheet. Yeah. Sorry. Let me grab that. I'll go through it somewhere. Well, anyway, it'll be case, and then add one, and then the critique. The critique will have an overview, and then I'll ask you to go to the permutation, which is at the very bottom where I have it put, and then so we're just going to address the permutation and then the rest of the debate after the overview. Make sense, everyone? One more time. Okay. So. The new case page that the negative presents in the LSE, then the case in PMC order, then the critique. The critique has an overview, then we're going to talk about the permutation, then I'm going to go to the top and address the rest of it.
Not a convincing modeling argument, the PY is devastating for them on this question. You conceded that China and India will inevitably develop facial recognition technology. Your only warning here is that you set a precedent. China empirically does not listen to the president, and your only argument is that they would go to weapons technology. China obviously loves spying on people, proven by they do it on their own people, reason why they lie. Facial recognition technology also no answer to the Indian argument, no reason why you saw modeling, and you only think the United States and people will just go to other countries that would obviously not allow for regulations like Dubai and Hong Kong, which means the facial recognition technology is obviously inevitable. The existence of that technology that causes their problem, which means there's no way for them to solve racism. You should go to the racism debate now. You said that you will not win the league turn at this argument. Your impact is that technology allows us to be racist and causes bad. Problems are arguments that racist technology is the panacea for solving environmental harms, i.e. if we just remove the technology, there would be no racism. That ignores the underlying problem that you do not solve the root cause of racism, which indicates the biggest exists in Mississippi. You do not do anything to resolve that question. You do not do anything to stop TSA frisking people. You do not solve your own uniqueness arguments to your advantage. There is no way you will win an offensive argument justification for this. You say there is an ethical side. You say a couple of problems. That first argument, we're winning, that we're turning the trash out of the app on the critique, but also that is relevant when you do not solve your ethics. There's no way for you to do that. You only the racism will exist and inevitably advantage too.
Actually, that's fine. Never mind. Okay, over.
You should be skeptical of all there. We solve your impacts. In favor are, we are the root cause of your impacts. But empirics are on our side. For the longest time, the food debate was, we don't have enough agricultural technology to grow food for the world's population. If we just had better ag tech, we could feed the world. However, decades of agricultural production that far exceed the world's demands mean that means that grain silos in Kansas are full of food while more people die of hunger annually than multiple nuclear wars would ever combine. Our argument is that proves the thesis of the criticism is true. There are underlying social issues that the affirmative does not resolve and places it into a fantasy realm of understanding the technological panacea. They will go hard for this argument that we do not solve their specific solvency mechanism, and they might even win that argument. But that is interesting and irrelevant because they're already too late and too far behind on the question of whether or not the criticism solves the harms of the PMC. Permutation debate. Go there. First argument is, I'm not exactly sure what the permutation is. You should extend our interpretation that indicates that you get one handwritten permutation. Your argument is counter-interpretation. We only have to say it. Our argument is that there's no way, we can't hear what you say, and you didn't even repeat it, which means that there's no way to do it. You're super unclear. There's no way for us to do that. You gotta have a single text. We give you all of our advocacy text. I think the permutation is do the affirmative. I said that does not solve any of our arguments because it's still written in the epistemology that we're generally linked off of. And the second one might be a permutation that has them rethink their epistemology. That's intrinsic because that's not anyone's plain text. You can see that that's an independent voting issue. To reject the team on faith because it causes demo stress because I never know what permutation you're going for, but also it makes it impossible for me to ever generate your argument. We'll try to make this argument that this double-bind sort of argument that indicates that the status quo, or we can overcome the status quo, or the risk of, or the alternative, the permutation will solve the risk of a link. That's nonsense though, because the alternative solves the arguments prove that the alternative is good enough to overcome the status quo. This argument will not be nonsense, or not be offense for you because you're not winning that the link, you are not winning that the link is good. There's still a risk that the permutation includes a link that means it's not that beneficial compared to the alternative. The decent point is the case is not net benefit to the permutation. You've conceded that the alternative solves case alone. The decent point is that the damage is already done. There's no way for the permutation to resolve that. Your epistemological understanding has already taken place. The decent point is that you do not solve our endorsement arguments. You've conceded that if any ballot that affirms you, i.e. voting on the permutation, would ignore your epistemology. We're winning on the offense page. That's problematic. The decent point is that federal action is a disadvantage to the permutation. You've conceded that federal action absolves individuals of their own understanding of technology, which allows people to say things like, I don't have to not be racist anymore because the government will just fix all the racist problems in the world. That understanding necessarily causes some conflict and turns back all their advantages. Framework, please. You say you say we should evaluate. Wait, what's this first argument about?
They have intent as value to their epistemology.
Prove their first three arguments about how they have intensive epistemology and that stopping racism is good. Our argument is not a question of the understanding of how it solves racism. Our argument is the question of the way you come to recognize technology. Technological control, either increasing it or decreasing it, is not our argument, but it's a question of the way you relate yourself to technology. You do not have an offensive justification for relating technology as a panacea for environment or for socially constructed conflict. Racism, which is the only advantage you're going for. The fact that they're behind on the root cause debate on the advantage from the first place proves the thesis, the proof that the direction arrow is going in our favor. You say that you do not answer these fiat arguments correctly. You should extend the CISA point under that JT makes on fiat that indicates the voting act does not mean the plan goes into effect, which means you do not have a link of ability to solve for back to either of your advantages. This argument goes cold conceded. Do not allow the CMR to get squirrely on this question. The only thing they say is that this assumes a normal understanding of fiat, not a world where we frame racism in a prior question. That is irrelevant. The only way you get to access racism is not by your rhetorical understanding. Your arguments are predicated on federal action changing the world. Your next argument is that technological development is inevitable. This is cool. tool because our fourth argument that JT makes is directly answers this in the LOC. It's not a question of whether or not this argument is just code for humans will learn things. Yes, that is true. People will learn things to develop things. It's a question of how we relate ourselves to that technology. We can just use technology to do things like make calculations, but not think that it will solve things like racism or socially constructed problems. That you say that that's the first step to breaking some you're saying that people will inevitably make tools. That's true. People will make tools. That's inevitable. It's a question of how we understand our relationship to those tools. We can view them as simply tools, or we can view them as magic wands to make things like racism. No, oh wait, you say this. You see me make this ontology argument. First argument that the link proves. The link to make this proves all of your ontology arguments that indicate that you do not have a good ontology. Wait, what else exactly did they say there, JT?
It says ontology is objective, it leads to more violence.
They say ontology is objective, leads to more violence. Ours, but you don't have a justification for that. Also, the alternative solves back all of the reasons for violence. What's up?
Okay, why would somebody create tools?
Just because? It's good enough. Well, okay, you can have a tool to do a function, right? For example, you can have a calculator do things like add math for you, but you should not have that calculator add math to tell you things like you will solve all of your budget problems because if you just have enough like calculations, you won't have to work anymore. Your understanding of that of technology is uniquely different from that because it says we should restrict technology so we stop things like racism. That is uniquely different than saying we should use technology to do things like recognize spaces, right?
That objectivity argument means that we deny their ability to align with technology.
That objectivity argument means that we deny their ability to align with that argument. Also extend the explicit terms case argument that does not get addressed. You create a dichotomy of haves and have-nots, technological necessity and technological control. They dichotomize people who do not have restrictions on face recognition technology. Those people become have-nots. That inevitably gets excluded by the plan. You say that technology, you say that technology is, you're going to go hard for this link that indicates that we say technology is bad. That just proves our root cause argument. It's not a question of whether or not the technology is good or bad. Resolving that issue does not get them to ballot. It's a question of your epistemological understanding. But MJ has literally zero arguments to justify that epistemological understanding. They may have a couple of arguments to justify their understanding of engaging racism, but not a single one that justifies their understanding of technology. They might go hard for this POI that we just had on the question. You should extend the analysis I'm making of the POI that indicates that there's a unique difference in looking at technology as a tool versus looking at it as the creation of social harms. Do not let the PMR just stun on this question. They do not have enough offense in their argument. You say federal action is irrelevant. No, it links to the permutation and it links to the links to the criticism because it maintains the illusion that current modes of understanding epistemology are only left to the federal government, which absolves individuals of their guilt. The alternative resolves this question because it says that people are socially responsible for their actions. Voting for the alternative rejects the quick-based epistemology. You have conceded that the ballot is key because that's the only way we can reject epistemology. You've also conceded the fact that this bad epistemological understanding shapes policy, which indicates that their epistemology that creates the dichotomy of have and have-nots eternally turns back the affirmative, which means there's no way they can win.
Okay, so it's going to be a short overview on top. We're going to go to advantage 1, or actually status quo solve the app in advantage 1. Permutation, and then the rest of the criticism in order. I'm not sure if that was the same order, but it might have been, so. Is everybody ready? Okay. Conceding advantage 2 to us was probably really damning for them because the only impact that they can go for now is racism. The problem with this is they predicate all of their offense on the criticism that their epistemology is good because they solve for things like racism. This is not the indictment that the criticism highlights. Our argument is that the internal link to racism goes completely ignored because we view technology as the ultimate solvency for all of these issues. The problem with that is, one, we are winning uniqueness arguments as on the status quo specifically how other forms of racism through their same technology are inevitably going to develop, which means they never solve back to the root cause. Their impacts are probably inevitable. The only thing that you can justify now is voting on what future policy actions are probably shaped the best. Our argument is that we do this the best because we allow people to evaluate structural issues before political issues, which eventually lead to more epistemologically sound policies. It means that we are a prior question to this. They never solve the root cause of their harms, and not only that, the status quo makes all of their impacts inevitable. Go to the status quo solves. We are winning a multiple arguments as to why, one, China is already developing this. They conceded that they will actually extend across a huge number of arguments as to why AI is being developed in the status quo now. When this is true, and they never argue as to why China and England would ever be able to stop making these space or this specific form of technology ultimately means that they never saw back to their harm, because the overwhelming majority of the racism that comes from this technology is not going to be solved because it's on a global level. This means that they never solve back for their impact. The best that they can do is solve for some racism, but the problem with that is they, one, conceded that fiat doesn't allow you to do this. It means that they never associate their framework as to how they can have spillover and out-around arguments. The only way that you can do this is by justifying an epistemology which we say the alternative uniquely provides. Advantage one. Very similar to the status quo solve the app argument. In a world where technology is racist, and this has been their argument from the beginning, and then also in a world where they can see that the racist technology still can develop by other countries, means that they never solve back for the impacts. This is also a huge link to our criticism, because it gives us the idea that we can solve for one form of racist technology in the United States and somehow alleviate all the racism in the world. Our argument is not only is that impossible, but also you don't solve for this because, one, you don't have access to fiat, but two, it also justifies the idea that environmental degradation as well as technology dependence is always going to be inevitable. It means that they're perpetuating racism in the future because epistemologically unsound policies will inevitably get passed. This means they have no ability to solve back to this, and their advantages is probably completely turned. Their only chance to win is go for the permutation, but they have no way of going for this because I'm really not sure what the text was. If you have a good flow of how the text goes, I would say you probably have a lot more ink on my paper than I do. But the problem with this is they don't give us this. You're going to give us huge leeway on the idea that the perm does not function. Any new mitigation, any new evaluation in the PMR as to how the perm functions around would be hugely abusive to us and never should evaluate it. But you're also going to extend across the argument that they're affirmative. They literally say do the app. We have specific links as to how your rhetoric and epistemology specifically link you back to the criticism. Means that you never get to sever your epistemology. It means that the perm will inevitably fail. Even if they get access to somehow solving some forms of racism, they still act under fiat, which means that they never actually solve for the racism, but they feel like they do, which is the Band-Aids argument that technology provides that we've been going for. The only arguments that they have left on their framework is that their epistemology is good because they solve for racism. This is not a question, again, of what racism is, it's how they use their technology. Our argument is that they literally have no offensive reasons on this whatsoever as to why our ethic is uniquely good. They just have arguments as to why their ethic is or how their ethics are good. Our argument is in a world, even if that is true, you never get access to those solvency. We also are winning links as to how this turns your app because it makes problematic future policies happen.
Cool. It's going to go as the advantage one case debate, all like the China stuff and whatnot. But also I'll be on advantage one proper. I have those. I have the case debate floated separately from the actual advantage one. So I will let you know where I am. What I have is subpoint B. So it'll be the critique. In the order it'll be subpoint B, like the impact / links, the reliance on technology, the term discussion, that sort of thing, the solvency discussion, and then the perm debate, perm alt debate, and then the framework debate. And a quick overview on top. Is everyone ready? Yeah. Cool. Easy battle for Will and I, because the two issues that are isolated are, one, who is the root cause, and also who basically better solves the reliance on the technology as a solution of all of our problems. They say over and over again, especially from the MOs and overviews to the critique, that they are the root cause. But yet there's not a single warrant provided for that. We would tell you that the PMC provides the warrant previously, having in early society, racism already existed. They have not given a single reason as to why having hammers and feeling like that hammer is the solution to all my problems immediately causes me to judge the people in this room based on a sub and super race. There is that argument, and warrant does literally not exist. So therefore, you should immediately prefer the PMC arguments. The second reason I think you should go to is the fact that we have 7 minutes of offense, juking them as to how reliance on technology is the solution of all of our problems, such as security, and the security myth that we talked about in the beginning, is a bad thing, and therefore you immediately are going to be turning this. Go to the case proper, though. The first argument is going to be their
defense is far too little too late. They say that China is just going to increase surveillance. There's no reason as to why that actually is relevant to racism. They give no reason as to why China would use this racism. Furthermore, they've conceded that these 3 labs that does this, you can look at the solvency argument about how 3 labs that do this are all would be shut down in a world where they would violate the plan. But furthermore, they've conceded that their own arguments are how China developing this is inevitable, which means there's probably no unique offense. It's only a net decrease of racism post-plan, which means you now can weigh this solvency of racism and all the problems of how this causes a mass amount of annihilation and extermination against as a net benefit to the perm. Go now to, now go to the advantage problem really quickly. The MO talked a lot about how prior question, and etc. Too bad, literally internally 3 says that from the beginning, not internally 3, the advanced one literally says from the beginning of early societies we've had this issue of racism and division of sub and super races because of this reliance on the security myth. You do not have an answer as how reliance on hammers and tools from the early society is what causes in any way, shape, or form. We are simply historically beating you out on what this actually means and where the root cause comes from, which means now, it's not enough, sorry. Now go to, we are winning the root cause, so it means you do not prefer the critique in any way, shape, or form. Any risk of perm solvency, any risk of turning means you immediately preference us. Go now to, because that's the only impact that matters, is the extermination of individuals via racism. They do not have arguments that interact with this, which means there only can be a solvency for this. You immediately preference the solvency of perm. Go to the B discussion, the term, this stuff. First reason why you're referring to perm is they cannot solve. They have conceded that reliance on technology has begun from the beginning, that we are reliant on forced survival. They say that, well, just using it isn't bad, but over that point where we've connected their reliance to actually surviving means from the beginning we have looked at the solution of all of our problems, aka surviving, which is probably the biggest internally, as the major thing that from the beginning that we've relied on technology for, which means from the beginning humans are hardwired evolutionarily to have this reliance, which you probably can't solve, which means any net benefit of solving for racism. What's up?
The argument that we're hardwired evolutionarily to have the epistemology of the PMC could have been in the MG if not.
Pardon me, that's just an imprecise synonym. I'm saying from the beginning, aka from the beginning of time when evolution was occurring, we've been doing it. So if you want to not have evolutionary hardwired as some sort of neurological argument, that's not what we're going for. So
yeah, the MG argument is for sure that the struggle to survive and the drive of evolution is what causes it to develop tools. So sure.
Yeah, we're not making a neurology argument, just history has proven this. Sweet. Also, go down to the term. The only 2 arguments we have in the term, which is most damning for them, is that one, we create haves and have-nots, and also that we don't decrease. We actually have proposed we propose getting rid of technology down to panacea. One, this is a shift. They say originally it's reliance on technology down to panacea, but saying that somehow getting rid of technology is now the panacea. We have shown from the beginning that reliance on technology, for instance, for our security myth, is the problem that we have, which means we should remove this because it's not the panacea to our problems. We isolate this problem as racism is the number one, which means we are decreasing this reliance as a solution to all of our problems. It's the number one thing. But furthermore, their argument about haves and have-nots is immediately solved for this because we indict this racism of have and have-nots via technology from the beginning. We got you from the beginning. I'm sorry that you just decided to run a case that is not competitive with this. What's up?
Yeah, it's the problem that the affirmative attempts to solve is the use of technology in order to solve from scary problems.
Yeah, they say, look, you shouldn't use technology to solve as a panacea for all of your problems because that will lead to an over-reliance. We say literally from the beginning, don't use technology as a solution to all of our security problems because that over-reliance is bad because it harms people and it eventually leads to extermination. Go to the perm debate. They're only arguing why the perm is, why you shouldn't have access to the perm is because it's not legitimate because it inevitably skews the metal over. You can flow across the argument that MG skew would now occur no half would win, which means that it all flows back against you, which means there's absolutely which means it's theoretically 100% legitimate. Furthermore, we tell you that it's simply do the plan and reject technology means we're reliant on solving our problems. We do not need it to handle it. There's no reason as to why it's true, which means we get full access not only to solvency, but also we have a unique increase in solvency because first go to the net benefit of, the first net benefit the only net benefit we need is that we solve for racism. We've explicated how this leads to extermination. You have not won the root cause argument. This is immediately the first net benefit. They're only disadvantage is federal action. We say that, the federal government from the beginning is the number one cause of this problem. Means that probably the reason why the federal government should solve. We tell you the federal government's actions is what causes this extermination of these people. There's simply too little too late on this question. Go to the framework really briefly. They try to go against this, federal action is the disadvantage. However, you've conceded that fiat doesn't occur. No federal action actually occurs in the world of fiat, which means there's probably no dissent of the perm. Which means not only does the perm have full solvency because we also reject this, Linter gives us access to this, but also there's a unique net benefit that only occurs in the world of the perm, does not occur in the world of the all properties. Game over there. Your own arguments on framework, you knock out the only offense you have against the perm, it's game over there.